Hi class, today we're going to be looking at properties of communities, and this is chapter 20 section 2. It's a pretty short section, just looking at how a community carries its species, how many species it can carry, and then how it can grow or develop over time. So first definition is species richness, and this just tells us how many species there are in a community. Places like the rainforest are going to have a high species richness compared to somewhere like the tundra. The value that you get will depend on the sample size, and it does vary with latitude. So your distance from the equator, you get less variety as you go farther away from the equator. Species area effect. Larger areas usually contain more species than smaller areas because there's just more places for them to live and carry out their daily functions, having food, enough resources. This often is applied to island species, so they'll take up the space that they are given. And we did that lab with the lizards in class, where the lizards evolved over time to take up all the space that they were given in order to have more of them survive. Stability is the community's resistance to change. It's how it responds to disturbance. So an example would be drought. So how do all the species respond when there's a large scale disaster or change in the environment? And how many of them survive through that? So if there is a large-scale disruption of an area, we will go through succession. And this is a gradual, sequential growth of species in an area. It's kind of a regrowth to an area. And what happens is that just in this picture, you have this in your notes packet as well, you have small annual plants, things that come through just once in a year. You have perennial plants that begin to grow after that once the soil can hold them. You have shrubs that will start to grow, and then you have softwood trees, and then you have hardwood trees. So a forest that is very well developed will have lots of hardwood trees. An area maybe that's been cleared for a building or for a road, near that area you'll start to see annual plants come, and then over time perennial plants will come, and then over time shrubs will grow, and it's all based on the soil and what it can contain and what it can host kind of for that different kind of species. So we have two types of succession. The first is primary succession, and this is when a community develops in an area that never had life before. This is an extremely slow process because there was nothing there before. An example would be bare rock or a sand dune. Secondary succession is when the community changes after a disturbance, like a farming or a flood or a fire. It doesn't take as long for that one. So here's primary succession as an example, and secondary succession is kind of a regrowth in an area that already had growth, already had lots of life, but maybe a fire came through and now it has to regrow. Pioneer species, these are the species that show up early in succession. These are small, fast growing, and they reproduce quickly. And then a climax community is a community that will last for a long period of time. This is kind of your end result of succession. That's the end of chapter 20, section 2.